Let's look more closely now at the role of Turkey in this Syrian conflict. Ankara has long called for the ouster of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. On Friday, the country's foreign minister said, and I quote, "If he doesn't want to go, if there is no transition, then transition government, and if he continues committing humanitarian crimes, the necessary steps to oust him should be taken." But that position could hurt Turkish relations with Russia, leaving Ankara stuck in a tough position between Washington and Moscow. I'm joined now by Şaban Kardaş, who is the president of the Center for Middle Eastern Strategic Studies. Turkey, of course, was represented at this G7 meeting. It has also been represented at the Astana peace talks, which were pushed and coordinated by Russia. So where does Turkey stand at present in what is this very, very complicated map of stakeholders in Syria?
Yeah, given the evolution of the Syrian crisis, especially since 2015, the big focus for Turkey is to defend its own interests and prevent the security.
So what are those interests? Just remind us.
The disintegration of Syria is a red line for Turkey. To prevent it is the big interest, but also the direct security repercussions flowing from Syria. The movement of the foreign terrorist fighters, the movement of the refugees, these are all creating direct threats on Turkey's own territorial integrity to some extent, and also domestic security situation, as we have seen the ISIS attacks and PKK terror attacks inside Turkey that originated from inside Syria. So the big concern is to focus on the security threats that are emerging from Syria. In that sense, since 2015, Turkey was pushing the United States to be more forward-coming in terms of being sensitive to its own security interests. But especially given the tensions with President Obama, the United States did not meet Turkish expectations. As a result, Turkey solved its problem with Russia that was created by the so-called jet crisis. And in that sense, Turkey also started even some understanding and cooperation with Russia on the ground in Syria, as well as diplomatic front, as you mentioned.
So it wouldn't be surprising for many of our viewers who don't follow the machinations of what is going on in Syria and Turkey's position. It wouldn't be surprising if people were slightly confused by the president's position. And after all, this is the president's position, isn't it? Or is this a coordinated, across-the-board parliamentary position for Turkey?
I would say it represents the big majority of Turkish population's views about the Syrian crisis as well. I mean, in terms of the parliamentary politics, the CHP, main opposition party, has been critical of that policy.
This is the Kurdish party?
It is not. It is the Republican People's Party, secular Kemalist party, but the Kurdish, pro-Kurdish HDP has been also critical.
Correct.
But on certain issues, when it came to, for instance, launching a direct military operation against Daesh, the Euphrates Shield, even CHP, Republican People's Party, did support. So in certain areas we have seen CHP supporting, but overall when we look at AK Party's own MPs plus the Nationalist Action Party, they have been also supporting. So there is a big consensus behind the policy in terms of being proactive inside Syria, both to some extent militarily, but also diplomatically especially.
After the suspected chemical attack, Turkey's president called Syria's Bashar al-Assad a murderer. He spoke at a rally saying, and I quote for our viewers, "Oh, Assad, the murderer, how are you going to find relief from their curse?" referring to the victims of the attack. "Oh, with the world and the UN keeping silent about it, how are you going to account for it?" Your response to those words?
Well, I mean, Turkey's Syria policy from day one, to some extent, has been shaped by the president's own personal views. His moral approach to foreign affairs, so to speak, I used to call it as such. I mean, in addition to country's realpolitik interests, he has expressed a certain moral interest in this particular case. From day one, when the demonstration in Syria did start, he has been personally also involved in the making of Turkish policy, vis-à-vis Syria, but also in terms of calling Assad to leave power, calling Assad to introduce reforms. The humanitarian side of the Syrian crisis has been making a big part of his moral policy.
Right. Rex Tillerson, the US Secretary of State, has landed in Moscow. He has a message from G7. He's not bringing a message with particular teeth, I think many experts would say, because there are no new sanctions. But he will ask Moscow to step away. Just over a month ago, Turkey hosted a rare meeting between Russian and American military officials in Alitalia. Now, let's just remind our viewers that the goal was to improve military coordination on the ground in Syria in the war against ISIS. Relations between the US and Russia have obviously deteriorated since Washington's strike on a Syrian airbase. So can Turkey, do you think, get Washington and Moscow back to the negotiating table if Rex Tillerson fails?
Well, I don't think Turkey will be in a position to bring two major international powers to negotiation table. It is beyond Turkey's role in the international affairs and also in the Syrian crisis. Here, Russia has been pursuing its own interests. To some extent, it did work with Turkey in terms of the Astana process on the ground as well, but beyond that, Russia pursued its own interests. For instance, it worked with PYD, it maintained its support to the regime. So I don't think Turkey is in a position to push Russia to change its course so that it can make up with the United States. So the same is also true because the American interest has been there, and I don't think Turkey is in a position to convince the American side to have a different approach.
We will continue with our reporting on and from Turkey throughout this hour because, of course, there is an important, very important referendum on the constitutional powers of the president coming up this weekend, and we will talk about how Syria might play a role in that. But for the time being, we thank you very much indeed for joining us. Well, still to come tonight.